Welcome to ACTPod, a podcast show that sheds light on the stories and impact of the social sector. The show is proudly powered by Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. Let's begin the change.
Hello there. You are welcome to yet another insightful episode of ACTPod, our story, our continent. I am Abiodun Owo, and as usual, I'm going to be your host on today's episode. So, today we're going to be having not just an insightful but exciting conversation with this gentleman that I simply adore what he's doing. I don't know, just hold on. I'm going to introduce him to you. He's doing so much awesome work with children in slums. Anyway, don't let me get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tunde Onakoya. He's the convener of Chessinslums. You're welcome, Tunde.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to start by saying thank you so much for, honoring our invitation to come here. I know you're on a very, very busy schedule, but at least you're here. So we'll make good use of the time. So our routine is when we have guests in here, we ask about them, and then we delve into what they are doing. So if you could just start with telling us, who is Tunde Onokoya and how on earth did you conceive Chessinslums?
All right, thank you very much. I've been writing recently, working on a book, and it's been interesting because, when you're writing and you have to dig deep into like past events and try to recall them. So I've had a lot of time to reflect on those things. And it has been a very humbling experience to see how far this has come from 5 years ago. And, I think for anyone to be able to do anything meaningful, there has to be a personal connection to it.
Right.
And we can think of it as like a pain point that I understood in depth, right? It was something I was very intimate with. And, it goes, way back to how I grew up, my own backstory. And, we grew up in Ikorodu, in a place called Isalodo, and it was basically a slum. And chess gave me a lifeline. And it's a really long story, but the summary is I got to learn chess at a really young age. It helped me go to school on scholarship. I got to compete at a professional level, and it saved me from the slums, right, and gave me a way to see the world beyond the confines of my environment. That is my own story. So 5 years ago, I made a decision to do the same thing for other children like me, that live in those slum communities. I mean, I remember at the beginning, I just had this idea. And it wasn't like I knew what the end game was. So I knew how, like, teaching chess to children in slums was going to save them from poverty or anything. It was just, okay, it was going to give them an identity, right? And when we think about children in poverty, it's easy to just dismiss it as, oh, they're poor, they don't have money, there are no resources, right? And we now think about helping them by just giving handouts. So I thought about what I could do within my own capacity. I was going to stay with them, right? So it was teach them chess. It might not put food on their table immediately, but it was going to help them develop capacity to think, right? And that is education. That is like giving them some semblance of education. And that is going to be a valuable skill for them. One that would continue to stay with them, the ability to think critically for themselves, right? And I just had faith in that idea that if I could teach a child in the slums chess and they could gain mastery of it, that people would respect them, or people wouldn't treat them just because of what they look like or their background, but by what they have the ability to do. So that was just the conviction I had, that they were going to have the ability to engage in this intellectual exercise that even some of the smartest people in the world run from. And that was how it started. I just took a few chess boards. I went back to Ikorodu, to a community in Majudu, not too far from where I grew up. And we started out. So, yes, that was the genesis.
And I think you turned out really well, So that brings me to the fact that, so you work with children in slums, and, the average person would think that children, first of all, in slums, second of all, won't be able to get it. Chess is sort of a complex game. How do you get them to understand this game, actually?
So, true, chess is a very complex game. And it's not even just the complexity of like learning. Like there are a lot of even more complex terminologies that you need to be able to break down. You know, like if you're teaching maybe the concept of Zizwentube, concept of like prophylaxis, like how do you teach that to a child who has never even seen the four walls of a classroom? And that was the first challenge, as you would imagine. Like, how do you communicate this effectively to these children who don't even have any form of education, that are out of school, that can't speak basic English? And you'd be amazed. The first day that I went and wanted to start the program, that was when I realized that, oh my way to, how would I even talk to these kids? I mean, I speak Yoruba too quite well, but it was like, how do you teach chess in Yoruba? So I just put out the chessboard. I started by teaching them board coordinates. And I can tell you that in the first 1 hour that I taught these kids, they were able to learn so much more than. And before Chessinslums, I'd worked in private schools. You know, I had this Chess in Schools program. I'd never seen anyone learn at that pace before. And it just made me probe even further, like how the children that people don't think too much about, it's easy to just box them in this stereotype that, oh, they're good for nothing intellectually, but then how are they getting these things? And within a very short time, then it made me realize something. And a lot of what I got to learn on that day is what drives me. Like every child has this innate capacity to learn.
Yes.
Every child has it. And if a child is not learning the way you're teaching them, then you must be able to teach them in the way that they can learn. So that was what I learned, to be able to teach them only in the way that they can learn, the street slangs, the gesticulations, the mixing it up and everything. And they were able to understand all of those complexity. And in just a few months, we took them out for tournaments and they were beating other kids from other rich schools. And so they have the capacity to learn. But somebody has to take a chance on them. So it's just that potential that they have that is unrealized. But if you just give them an opportunity, however basic it is, you'll be astounded by what they can do with it. And that was how, they got to learn chess and learn it really well.
I must say that you are really doing commendable work with these children. Really awesome. And I like the idea of dressing them in, adorable clothing, whenever you're having your programs, either dressing them in suits or in native attire. I think that's a great one because people think so low of children in slums, and it really shouldn't be that way. I follow Chessinslums on particularly on Instagram, and I see that you're always out there. At what point did you realize that I need to create some visibility for Chessinslums if we're gonna remain relevant? And how did you go about that?
Like when we started out, it was a passion project. In fact, I knew zilch about NGOs. I didn't even know like there was an industry for this. It was just a passion project. I thought I had this idea and I wanted to see it come to life. So I didn't have even like the administrative competence to build a structure, to lead. And I used to be a very shy person that would just want to be at the back and not be involved in anything. So being just thrown into like purpose like this, at first I struggled with it. And the only way I knew how to like cope was to run and shy away. Like I didn't want to do any interviews. I didn't want to put my face out there. The project was anonymous for like the first 2 years. We're just doing it, and I just wanted the work that we're doing to lead, because I didn't want to be put on the spot where like I'll need to talk about it. And the first time I tried, I flopped. I couldn't properly articulate my thoughts and the things that we're doing, and I felt really bad about that. But what now pushed me to like that journey of self, to see that if I could like to be able to do this successfully, because now you're on a mission to change the lives of so many children.
Right.
You're using chess as a vehicle. Chess is not the end in itself. It's a means to several ends. And those other ends could be maybe them getting education, getting just for the first time that people can see them, not for what they look like, but for what they can become. So the onus is on you to be able to make a compelling case for them. So I knew that means I have to like work on myself. I had to become the best version of myself to be able to speak on behalf of those kids that would never get that opportunity to speak for themselves. And I thought that was a huge responsibility. So I think that was like 2 years into like the project that I started being more deliberate about, okay, putting the stories out there, getting more visibility. Because if people see that these children in these slums are showing great aptitude for chess, and people would feel confident to give them opportunities. So then I started writing for the first time. I didn't know I could write so well. And I remember the first story I put out there about one of the girls in our academy. You know, she had never been to school before, but she was one of our best players. And someone just saw it. I was like, wow, like, she reminds me so much of my daughter, and her story resonates very strongly with mine. I'd like to sponsor her education from now until she's done with university.
Woo.
And I was like, okay. And that was how, like, just me putting that story out there helped that girl find a life-changing opportunity. So it was like now realizing that you're a superhero with an ability to, with a pen. And whenever you write, you could actually, like, cause something that could change someone else's life. So I wrote about another kid in our academy. I started writing. And the more I wrote about them, the more people would reach out to support their education.
Awesome.
That was when I knew that, okay, we couldn't just skip this. We're doing something truly phenomenal. And the world needed to hear about it. So that was how I just became a writer too, started sharing the stories.
So you discovered, you know, a lot of other innate talents that you actually have.
Yes.
You are multi-talented.
I am.
Okay, so in all of this, how have you harnessed technology to help, you know, keep pushing yourself out there?
All right, yeah, technology, I mean, social media, clearly. I think the internet, for me, in my opinion, is the greatest invention of mankind, right? Because it really it makes the world just one global village. It brings all of us together in a way that was never before thought possible. And, you know, social media is an expression of, you know, how, you know, the internet connects us. So I think social media has been very instrumental, you know, in the growth of Chessinslums, right? It started with Facebook. When I started, I had maybe 10 friends, or just a few of my friends. I didn't really use social media at all. Then the more I started sharing the stories, it just started growing and growing and growing and growing. Then at some point, I just stopped, you know. Then I got on Twitter, and maybe I had maybe like 500 followers, and it just grew to like almost 300,000, and everybody was just so interested in the stories. And so social media has been that amplifier for us, because, you know, it's one thing to do great work and not just feel heard or seen. And a lot of people struggle with this. They're doing really good work, but they're not seen, they're not heard. And it can be very painful, right? Because, you know, you just do these phenomenal things and you just maybe get one like, and nothing doesn't get any visibility.
And it's not encouraging.
So like having the courage to put yourself out there, to put your stories out there, despite the imperfections, is important. And leveraging social media has helped us be able to do that. And you can imagine the amount of traction it has given this cause, not just in Nigeria. In fact, we have more fans outside Nigeria than in Nigeria. We've gotten more support from like people in other countries than actual Nigerians, right? So social media definitely. And another case where we're able to really leverage technology was when COVID happened. So when COVID happened, we couldn't have like physical training sessions with the kids anymore. Like we had to shut down. So I started thinking about what we can do for them to continue to learn. Then I thought, what if we could get laptops or maybe iPads? And that time, like, there was no money at all. And so I started sending emails to ChessKid. So ChessKid is the biggest online platform for children in the world. So children can get to play online, take lessons online, then get to connect to other kids from all over the world. So there are children from China, US that use ChessKid. Yeah. So I wanted our kids too from Ikorodu to also like get that opportunity to interact and learn with other children. So I wrote to them, sent an email to a few people. We were able to get like 10 iPads, you know, from them.
Awesome.
And so they gave us free gold accounts for the kids to start learning online and start playing. And when we now brought the devices to the kids, we now realized that most of them had never even used, never seen a laptop before. And for some reason, it didn't just occur to me that there was that gap, where in a world that was constantly evolving, like these children don't even know how to use these technological devices. So for the first time, they got to engage the use of technology to play chess. So I got to teach them other things like how to use YouTube, use Google. Then we now organized a virtual match between our kids in the corridor there and the college students at the University of California. And the game ended in a draw.
Wow.
It was incredible. Even the VC of the UC Merced school, he was impressed, and we were able to like forge a partnership where one of the kids from our academy would get to go to UC Merced on a full ride scholarship.
Wow.
So that was another way. So now the kids can get to like play online, learn online, not just chess, but engage in the use of technology, right, to learn and to experience the world. Outside their own community. So I think those are the two most valuable ways in which we've been able to use technology to drive
It's
impact.
amazing how, technology can make the world become a global village, so to say. And, imagine you right here in Lagos, and then you're reaching out to, outside the shores of Africa, and even getting these kids, to be part of such benefits. I think that's an awesome one.
Thank you.
So you have mentioned, like one or two. So creating and increasing visibility for yourself, I think that's one. And also seeking out partnerships, because you didn't have that money, and then you didn't stop there. Because there are a lot of people with passion like you, but once they make it all about getting money, then it literally stops there. But you went ahead to seek partnership. Okay, if I can't get someone to give money, can I get someone to give gadgets, to give devices? And I think that's really, really awesome. Are there other strategies you've been using to raise funds for your program, for your projects?
Fundraising is such a tricky thing because, if you want to change the world, you need to figure out how to pay for it. Right. And it took me time to learn that, because we never raised any money from like 2018 when we started Chessinslums till 2020. So like between 2018 to 2020, that had just been me and a couple of my friends and volunteers. I would just pull our money together to buy boards, to take the kids for tournaments, to give them food after every training. Then a few people would support every now and then, But when we realized that, okay, we had something that was deeply impactful and we needed to scale it, we knew that we needed more resources. And, good thing you talked about partnerships and collaboration, because sometimes it's best to not try to reinvent the wheel. You could just leverage like ChessKit platform now. We didn't have to like build our own online platform or anything. We could leverage what they had. Exactly. So I can remember, like, this was me going from just being a passionate chess coach to now building administrative competence to understand that there are structures, partnerships. We need to like begin to think about like the funding ecosystem, around the work that we do. So this was the strategy that we had. So I first had to like define like the 5 places where the money is. You need money, right, to fund your project. So the first one was the grant, the grant and aid industry. Second one was the chess communities around the world. Chess is a global game, so people in the US, they have their chess federation, their chess community, so we could reach out to them for support. I also put like corporate, the tech startups, majorly the tech startups, because I was very like invested in like technology in Africa, right? So a lot of my friends were like founders of tech companies, so tech startups, the corporate, private institutions, then educational institutions, because we're using chess, as an alternative kind of education for the children. So it was like reimagining education for them, using chess as a vehicle. So what we're doing was contributing to educating children, so we could look towards opportunities to forge partnerships and get scholarships for the kids, right? So we first defined all of those pathways, then we now started exploring them one by one. And finally, social media crowdfunding. So those are the 5 pathways. Okay. And for us, social media has been the most effective. In fact, we've raised 90% of our funding from just social media. Right? So we just set up a GoFundMe page. And you don't have to do too much. Just share the details of the work that you do. And sharing that is understanding that you're not just sharing the technicalities of it. Because people don't necessarily care about the technicalities of what you're doing.
Right.
What they care about is the story. And the story is what helps them connect to the realities of the children. And you must be careful to not do it in a way that demeans the people you're advocating for.
Wow.
They call it poverty
So
porn.
true.
Try to score like pity points. No, there's a way to actually tell their story in a way that gives them agency. So we're not saying, oh, so this child is poor. No, we never do that. We see this child, despite all of these things, right? This is how they're still striving. And this is what they now have the ability to do. Now imagine if you now give them more opportunities. And that is why we go as far as like making, like from the tournament, you see them wearing suits, them wearing agbada.
Yeah.
That is very deliberate because
Yes.
we want them to, we don't want to keep feeding into that narrative of the African child in poverty. We want to change society's perception of what children, like the slum is just a place. It doesn't define people that live
They
there.
are, yeah.
So being able to like tell our stories like that has gotten us like a lot of traction on social media. So we've raised so much money. Chessinslums has never gotten any grant. We've never applied for any grant. And that is also intentional because we want to first work on a model that is
That
scalable
works.
and that where the impact is tangible and can be measured before we start exploring those pathways. But for us, it was that. For other people, it might be a little different, but it's just the same framework. So that is what has helped us. I mean, of course, we are still looking for money, but yes.
Okay,
far.
so if you're a donor, you're a funder out there, Chessinslums.
Help also.
No, but I really, really must say that I'm inspired by, all of the things that you have said right now, even with the funding strategies that you have used. So there are a lot of people out there, they have the passion, they are running non-profits, but once they write a grant and it doesn't go through, they just shrink back. So
True.
you need to come and see Tunde Onakoya. I think you should start consulting. Let me be your manager.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, so you can,
discuss
share from
salary.
your wealth of experience. Yeah, don't worry, I'm not expensive.
You look expensive.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's just, go right into, I see that you have talked about these kids. I'm so proud of them, even, right from talking about them. Is there one particular kid, you would like to talk about, maybe like share her success story or his success story? I know you have so much impact that you can talk about, but
Yeah.
maybe there's one that really strikes that you'd like to share his or her story with the world.
I have a lot of favorite stories of the kids, and I feel blessed to have my life filled with so many children. I'm 28, but I've lived, I've really
Like
truly
75
lived.
years.
Yes, and my friends call me old soul because I've lived, and a lot of why it feels like that is because I've my life is filled with so many children, like on this journey. Even, when you want to do a project like this, and the first advice that you'd get from like professionals is that don't be emotionally connected to the work you're about to do because you can't help everyone, right? And if you try to, it drains you. And something people don't even really speak about is that third person emotional trauma. Right, because you're working in some of the places where you feel poverty in its purest form, and that can be really, really hard. Right, that is why you're solving a hard problem, a social problem. It's not a problem Apple will solve.
Right.
So you've chosen to solve it, right? So you must be at least, you must find a way to cope, to detach, the emotions from being practical and objective. But I struggle with that. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. But one of the success stories of the kids is Ferdinand. I think I would like to share Ferdinand's story.
Okay.
For people that have followed the Chessinslums project, they've seen, what we did in Oshodi on that bridge, recently in Mokola, in Makoko, then in Ikorodu, and now even Burkina Faso, Kenya, Uganda. We've been to a lot of countries and we're like scaling. But Ferdinand's story would always be special to me for so many reasons. I remember when we met Ferdinand, it was in Makoko, so we had decided to scale up from Ikorodu where we started to see what was possible in other places. So we wanted to stage an intervention in Makoko and wanted to do something different from what everyone else had always done. So the first challenge in Makoko was the health hazards, the community. It's a slum, it's a floating slum with black water, sewage basically. And the children don't even speak. They don't speak English. They don't even speak my own local Yoruba dialect. They speak, most of them spoke Igbo instead. So there was the language barrier and everything else. But we still wanted to do it regardless to show that it was possible to do great things from a small place. And we selected all the kids that wanted to train. You know, we ran the pilot phase of the project for a month. We trained them 5 hours every day. Then have a tournament at the end of it. And Ferdinand did not come on the first day. But the second day he came around. And Ferdinand is 10. But he lives with this medical condition called cerebral palsy. Right? For people that don't know, it's brain damage basically that affects muscle movement and everything else. So he couldn't go to school. You know, he had to struggle, and other kids in the community they would bully him. They would call him Golugo, which means imbecile, and he would go home and cry to his mom. He couldn't speak as well, but he was only able to communicate with his mom. So he just, you know, sauntered into the training center, and the other kids were pushing him away. That you know, it was like that community kid that nobody wanted to play with. And I just called him, and I was wearing this shirt, and I just gave it to him, and he was really happy. He smiled, and I tried to like talk to him, but he couldn't speak. So I just told our photographer to like put him in a class so he could just learn, so he doesn't feel left out. And the next thing, I think it was the next day, our project manager just came to me and he was crying. I was like, what's going on? Like, Tunde, come and see something. So he just took me to the table where the boy was playing. And I think the instructor gave them this very complex geometry to solve. And he was the only one that was able to solve it.
Wow.
And, you know, for a boy that doesn't speak, he realized that he had a sound mind. He was a gifted child. And chess became his first language, like the way he could now express everything that he had in there that I had never been able to share. And it was incredible. So I just said, you know, just keep training him, and you know, we kept training them. Then at the end of like the project, we had a tournament. That was when we made suits for all the kids in Makoko, and you can guess who won that tournament?
Ferdinand.
It was Ferdinand. Yeah.
That is so awesome.
It was such an incredible success story. I was so excited to share it, and it went viral. In fact, for weeks, I was getting thousands of emails from people around the world who had kids, you know, with special needs, and it was so inspiring for them, you know. And the governor of Lagos State saw that and called and was like, I would like to play chess against this kid, and we took him there, and the game ended in a draw. Although the boy was winning,
oh, okay.
I thought he beat
the governor.
But it ended in a draw, and the governor just went in and gave him #1 million, and
wow.
you know, so they sponsor his education and that of his siblings now. And you know, Ferdinand's father is a fisherman and his mother, you know, a petty trader. But it was clear that, you know, destiny had just chosen a more glorious path for him. He will be traveling to Greece next month for a tournament sponsored
so
by
cool.
the International Chess Federation president. So it's really good.
Wow.
And Netflix would also be making a movie about him. So it's just, you know, it's just such an incredible story of like triumph of the human spirit, and it's a story that inspires me as well. And I'm just glad that I got to be a part of that journey. Imagine if we never went there. Imagine if we never gave him a chance to just learn. Right? Just imagine how much different, you know, his life would be now. So it's a story that inspires me. It's one of my favorite stories to tell, you know, because it reminds me of like who I am and what I can become. So this is like Ferdinand's story of becoming. It doesn't end here, right? Maybe he can even become world champion someday. You know. So he's in school now. You know, he's still training, and I think the future is really good.
Really
good for him.
Really good. You have no idea how much impact you're having, you're making in the world. That is so awesome. I mean, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
The things that you do and that you continue to do. This is so wonderful. I wish this conversation wouldn't end, but then we have to just round up. If you could pick on perhaps the biggest challenge that you've had, you know, as a convener of Chessinslums, and how are you dealing with it?
There are a lot of challenges, and it's you know, it's hard. It's really hard, and you know, now it's too late to give up. I've contemplated giving up so many times.
No, not with Ferdinand. No, you can't.
But I mean, I can't give up, obviously, because I think now more than ever, I see how we're giving so many people hope. We're actually giving the world one more thing to believe in. And hope is powerful. Money is always a constant challenge because we're trying to do so much, even with little resource. So, yes, we're looking for money. We want to build an academy. In fact, the vision for Chessinslums is to reach 1 million children over the next decade across Africa, 8 million children in slum communities across Africa, because I believe this could be a revolutionary idea to raise a new generation of intellectuals, even from the slums, by just giving them the gift of chess. It's not just a board game. It's an amazing educational resource. In most schools in Europe, chess is a part of their curriculum because they see the cognitive benefits and how it enhances critical thinking. And that is what is needed for the future of work, right? Critical thinkers.
Right. Yes,
Children that
right.
will not just complain about Africa's problem, but challenge the status quo and turn those problems to global opportunities. So that is the vision for Chessinslums. There are a lot of different strategies to codify this model and start replicating in other places. We've been to Uganda, to Kenya, and it's a movement. But we need money to be able to fund that. I want to build an academy, the biggest chess academy in the world, here in Lagos, Nigeria. So we're really looking for partners to help us, bring this dream, and make it a reality.
Okay.
Then for me personally, a challenge is just I'm too connected to the work that I do, and it has made me neglect so many other aspects of my life. So I'm learning to find balance, and I'm learning to find balance, and so that's it pretty much. But
Okay. So speaking of the fact that you need money, if donors and partners, are looking for you, how would they find you?
Yeah, you can send us an email at hello@Chessinslums Africa.
Okay.
I use Twitter a lot because that is where I share a lot of my thoughts and insights, from the project. So you can follow me on Twitter and send me a message, Tunde_OD, or just follow us across all social media platforms, Chessinslums Africa on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on Twitter, so our website. So anyone, just please look for us.
And they will find you. I trust they will
Amen.
find you. Just look out. Be on the lookout. Are you ready? Are you ready for the bumper harvest?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. So finally, if you had one wish for Chessinslums Africa, what would it be?
One wish. So if there was a genie now, and I could just rub the lamp and say, "You have one wish."
Yes.
What would I ask for? Don't let me say money again. So the only thing.
Don't worry, money is sorted. The money is
academy.
coming after you already.
Yes, I think an academy. It's important to have that
Okay.
academy. We want to build a space, and this academy would be for children living in impoverished places, orphans, street kids. The reason why I'm wearing this cap is because I'm part-time area boy, part-time chess coach. It carries the spirit of what we're able to do for street kids in Oshodi on that bridge. But we want to do more of that. But we need a center where we can bring them in and reimagine education for them. It's important to have that central point, where we can begin to nurture the next generation of critical thinkers. Chess is just that one tool, but I feel like this project is going to evolve into other things, right? Chess is just one way, to achieve that goal, right? So I think that academy, I wish the academy would just have land and the building would just come and everything is fully equipped and it can serve maybe 1,000 children. That would be a dream come true for me. So that's the one wish I have for Chessinslums right now.
It's a good thing that you've put this out there, and you never know, it will come into fruition. That's my prayer for
Amen.
For you, for Chessinslums. I really have to go now. Thank you so much for coming once again. We really appreciate you honoring our invitation.
Thank you for
You've
having
heard
me.
it from Tunde of Chessinslums Africa. To reach out to them, just look out for Chessinslums on social media. And this is where it's going to be a wrap for this episode. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to ACTPod. For inquiries and feedback, please reach us on actpod@actrustfoundation.org. Follow us on social media at ACTFoundation_ on Instagram and Twitter, and Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation on Facebook. The show is proudly powered by Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. ACTPod, our story, our continent.